Awesome. Let's jump into it. So, My Muscle Project, welcome back to another episode. Today, we have on the founder creator of Animal Flow, Mike Fitch, and we're super excited to have him on because Beck, one of our coaches, has just started doing one of the classes, the Animal Flow classes, and it's gone really well. It's definitely something that I think a lot of people are interested in. It's kind of from my experience and some of the stuff I've done, it seems like some combination of breakdancing with capoeira. It has a lot of similarities in there, but it's obviously not. It's its own thing. And as we were discussing at the start of the podcast, it is very hard in this day and age to start your own thing and have it take off and do extremely well. You know, CrossFit obviously being one of them. There's other franchise and gyms out there, but an actual specific methodology of training is a whole different beast. So, Mike, thanks for being on the show. And can you tell us how you have managed to, or when you first got the idea that, hey, I'm going to make this Animal Flow an actual thing, and I'm going to try and sell it to people?
Yeah, so the way it came about was really organic because it was really just through my exploration of different movement styles. And so I had been in the fitness industry I started as a personal trainer when I was 19 years old. And so I'd always been in the fitness industry, but it wasn't until I turned 30 that I was just in a phase where I was lifting a lot and I was, way bigger than I am now. And I just kind of felt terrible all the time. So I just realized that there was something else that my body was craving, something that I wasn't giving it. And so I decided to start exploring other disciplines, especially body weight movement practices. And so started with gymnastics, which led to parkour, which led to breakdancing, as you mentioned, which led to some circus arts and hand balancing. And so, once you start kind of going down that road, I mean, you can just get lost. So it was really the impetus, or I guess I could say the catalyst for creating a program was that I was coming from a background that was very strongly or had very strong roots in pre and post rehabilitation and postural correction and working with postural distortions and things like that. So for me, I already understood a lot about how the human body is intended to function and then how we kind of fuck it up along the way. And so for me, as I was learning some of these new modalities and new strategies, and first of all, I have to say I was terrible at all of them. Like I was really bad at every single thing because it was so outside of my wheelhouse. And it was so ironic to me that I'd spent so many years working on my body and had very little ability to actually work my body. So it was enlightening. It was confronting. It was all these things. And I thought, you know what, there are a lot of components here that could benefit anybody. So anyone, any person at any stage, at any level, at any, someone who's coming in deconditioned, someone who's very conditioned, there's so much power in some of these movements that are all ground-based. They're all body weight. They're all closed chain. And so I was able to use one of my strong points, which was just understanding programming. So I can look at all these pieces and go, okay, so how can I take this and take this and take this and modify it and or progress it to where we're trying to elicit a very specific response from the human body. And so how can we look at every single angle and get incredibly detailed on how we would teach these movements, but then do it in the totality of an entire system that, again, the barrier for entry is low. So anyone can come in and feel successful doing it. Although it does lend itself to just get deeper and deeper and deeper and to get into some really, really advanced and technical movements. And that was kind of that was the idea. So that was the whole, how the whole thing came about was, wow, I want to share my experience that I'm having with other people. And I want to put it together in a system that everyone can benefit from. And so that was really the beginning of Animal Flow. And I think to answer the second part of that question, or maybe it was the first part, which was, how do you go about putting together a program like that you put out to the masses? And I think the answer to that is you just have to not know better. Like you literally just have to go in like blind, just ignorant and go, you know what, this is really cool. I want to share it with other people. And I'm not going to give a shit about like all the obstacles and all the naysayers that will probably stand in the way.
Yeah, nice. And do you think there was anything from like your previous decade of lifting? Because obviously it seems, well, it pretty much is the point where everyone gets started with their training journey. Is anything that you actually learned from that you still feel like benefits you today?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And I can tell you, making the transition. So at one point I was very into Olympic lifts. I was very into kettlebell training. Of course, I said the pre-post rehabilitation. I was very into sports specific training. And so all of those foundations created the petri dish, if you will, or the environment for me to want to explore other things, but still keep a solid foundation. And so I can tell you from my own experience, going from loaded training to then making the shift and only doing body weight training was a huge challenge on multiple levels, not only in maybe feeling weak in something or not feeling as capable as you would in another style of training. And again, how exposing it was. So going from loaded training to then body weight training exclusively, and that meant like calisthenics. So not just, flow and floor work. That meant like a lot of handstand push-ups, muscle ups, human flags, pistol squats, like the really big calisthenics movements. And that was, again, really inspiring to me, really intoxicating. I loved that it posed such a challenge that was about skill acquisition. And so I can tell you now, 8 years later, so now I just turned 38. Animal Flow now has been out for almost 8 years, or just about 7 years. And now my training schedule, my training program is very much a combination of loaded training, calisthenics training, flow training, mobility modalities. Like the human body is so infinitely complex. One of the greatest things that I learned through that entire experience was you have to do everything. You have to do everything because that's part of how we honor our system. So like our body is capable of expressing strength and power and endurance and flexibility and mobility and breath and all those things. And so one of the ways that we can ultimately honor the system that we have is to challenge it in every single way possible.
Yeah, nice. That's a good way of putting it. So obviously it's the lifting side of the training is the most popular side of training at the moment in the entire industry. How do you feel like, and then a lot of people, obviously they make the shift back to this sort of stuff, or eventually they feel like they either stick with lifting forever or they walk a path that you walked and they explore something different that they want to get excited about. How do you find, or why do you think the reason is most people don't eventually make the shift into something more? Why do you think people get so stuck in the lifting and the aesthetics only side of training from your experience?
I can tell you from my experience, not only in my own personal story, but also, of course, working with many, many clients as well as trainers, of course, is we as human beings have the tendency to go towards things that make us feel strong and capable and successful. And so if we were introduced into fitness through lifting external loads, then we probably feel strong when we go in and we do bench press and we do squat and we do, lat pull down or bent over rows or whatever. So I think the human kind of condition is that we don't want to step outside of something that may expose us and may make us feel weak and unsuccessful. Because you guys know, it's specificity, right? If we go and we train the exact same way every single day, our bodies are adaptation machines. So they will adapt, and those weights will start feeling lighter and we'll start feeling better and more jacked or pumped or, lifting more weights or whatever. So the desire to go outside of that and try something that's completely new, which again, going back to specificity, if it's so new to our system, if it's such a new challenge or stimulus, more often than not, we're going to be shit at it. And so when we try and go, when you encourage or challenge someone to go and try something totally new, it's fear-based, right? Because they're going to be exposed, and oftentimes they're going to be exposed in front of their peers or other people. And that's a scary place for a lot of people. And so I think there's such a mental side of why people don't go and try new things. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, you have to continue to grow, because you guys know anytime where we're doing the same challenge, the same stimulus over and over and over and over again, our body will adapt, and not always in a positive way. There's a point of diminishing return where if we don't change what we're doing, then it's going to start being more destructive than constructive. And so my message for anyone is always, hey, go be bad at stuff. Like, go try something that you would never normally try. because then they may find out that, okay, here's space to grow, but also they may find out that they really love this new thing. And, you know, that's one of the really important messages that makes a lot of sense to me is, you know, fitness is, there has to be a love, right? There has to be a love story there, where I don't know what brought you guys into working in fitness full time, but there has to be something that makes you want to keep coming back. And the problem is some people never find that, or they just try out one thing and they go, you know what, fuck it, I don't like this. This is not me. And then they don't try anything else. And so whether you're an experienced exerciser with many years of training or you're brand new into the exercise realm, you have to keep trying new things, because the experience is so rich, not only from a physical standpoint and how our body expresses and can deal with new stimulus, challenge, and loads, but also to keep our brain healthy. So to continue to create new challenges that the brain has to then go through its Rolodex of experience to go, is there anything like this that I've done before? How can we now take some past experiences and make them relatable to this new challenge? And so just that for brain health is fantastic. So just allowing the brain to continuously process new information and figure out how to get a result that is close to what we're striving for.
What I found was the hardest leap to make to go into something like animal flow. And sometimes it's hard to even take it seriously at the start, is because I've done fitness for so long, and there's always like just the way you do it is like you're doing a certain amount of work. So before CrossFit, I was like, okay, like how many sets and reps am I doing here? And then with CrossFit, it's like, okay, so how long is this row?
Right.
And it's never just like, just like for fun for a bit. Like every single thing has like some definite parameter. But then when I went and did the animal flow, it's just so different, and it's hard to get into it in the same way at the beginning, because, you know, it's like, it's a flow. There's no set of reps, like there's no time, there's no way to even do better than the person next to you. And sometimes like, that's the hardest leap of the entire thing.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard. It's not as quantifiable as other training systems. And the person that you're competing against is yourself in your last performance, right? And so it's, you know, you can have 20 people in the room, all of different levels within the animal flow practice. And they're all just getting the most out of their particular experience, right? And so we often come across that when dealing with trainers and fitness professionals that are like, cool, how many sets and reps? Or like you said, how long am I doing this for? And the challenge is always going, all right, well, we're going to ask you to think differently about this. And however, it still, of course, can be modeled to the context in which you're working in. So like, let's say, you know, one movement is like a crab reach, right? So we call it a crab reach. So you could say, okay, cool. We're going to combine crab reaches with front squat, and you're going to do 10 crab reaches on each arm as active rest. And so like, you can, of course, fit it into a spreadsheet or into a program where each one of the movements can stand alone. And that's one of my favorite parts about that program, is each one of those movements can stand alone and have tremendous benefit when used properly and in the right place for the right person. Or you can put them all together and then create a fluid, multi-planar, multi-joint, proprioceptive feedback, you know, really rich environment where they can just try to attempt to get more fluid and or better, or increase the neural sequencing of the transitions and how their body can actually take in the stimulus and create movement. So that was always the intention when creating the program, was this is something that has no dogma, it has no stigma, it has nothing that comes along with it other than wherever it works, put it in. And so we wanted it to be this thing that was like this adhesive or this glue that would hold other things together. So like, if you were coming from a world that was all strength and power, this could be another way that you could get in your mobility, flexibility, breath training that you may actually like, you know, so it may be less monotonous than like, you know, doing some traditional range of motion stuff or even like distractions or anything like that. You may get even better benefits because it's your body figuring out complexity of movement. And so anyway, so going back to that, so it became a bridge for people coming from strength and conditioning, and then also a bridge for people coming from dance, yoga, particularly yoga, who are kind of locked inside of their mat. And they're locked inside of their mat with a lot of the focus being on flexibility, extensibility, and stability, where they could very much benefit from more strength and power. And so allowing them to kind of break outside of their mat and then express more strength and power through animal flow movements, also tremendously helpful for them. And then we see it, of course, bleed into the rehabilitation world. We see it bleed into the Pilates world. We see it bleed into, it's just kind of the initial intention. We're seeing it come to fruition now, which is, it's just plugging in lots of different places.
How do you, when you have a conversation with most of your trainers, how do you normally find they come, sorry, not with your trainers, with people that attend your seminars or find you for the first time? How do they usually find you? Is there one particular way that they mostly say, it's through Instagram or it's through this one trainer, or what is the normal source people find you through?
It's almost always social media. And I have to give so much credit to organic growth with social media, and between, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Even when people come to the courses now and we ask them how they found out, that it's always, I saw an Instagram video or I saw, Facebook video. And one of the things that we have that going for us definitely is how visual animal flow is. And so when people see it, they're like, well, I may not know what the fuck that is, but it looks kind of cool and I want to try it. Or they just have association. So they go, oh, well, that's capoeira, or that's, martial arts, or BJJ, or that's, so there's always the association thing. And so we're always like, hey, if you like that other thing that you think this is, you should come try this, because you're probably going to like it as well. So anyways, to go back to your question, we always attribute social media and organic growth to where we are now with the Animal Flow program.
Nice. Is there anyone that does the Animal Flow? Like, does everyone that do Animal Flow about? Like, do they have to do a program or get certified, or is there stuff out there that people could just kind of see it and then just end up doing it themselves?
Yeah, so just to bring some clarity to anyone who doesn't really know what Animal Flow is, or like what's going on with the ground movement stuff. So of course, if you look over the past 10 years, there's been a huge increase in people on the floor, right? And so whether that be with jiu-jitsu, whether that be with Animal Flow, whether that be with Ido Portal, or some of those other guys in the movement space who are really pioneers in animal locomotion and crawling, and those guys, like Ido came from a capoeira background. Scott Sonnen has some really fantastic animal locomotion stuff many years ago. And so that stuff's been around forever. And if you go back and look in martial arts and you look in the history of different exercise styles, animal locomotion has been around for ages. It's nothing new. However, the unique thing about Animal Flow is that's only one part. So that's one component, is the animal locomotion. And we always say in Animal Flow, we mimic animals with the intention of improving the function of the human animal. And that's really what it's about. So in the Animal Flow practice, it's not about like finding your spirit animal or whatever. Although if that's your thing, that's cool. But it's really, we get so technical on this is how you crawl, because we want to, again, improve how the body sequences motion from in to out and then back in again. And we also want to look at joint angles, joint restrictions, decoupling, and all these things that are really kind of hot in the functional training space, but we can do all of those things in quadruped on the ground. So that's one part of it, is the animal locomotion. And again, whenever you see someone doing animal locomotion, it may not be that they learned it from Animal Flow. It may be that they've seen one of the other million videos out there and they just go, cool, that looks cool, I want to try it, and I'm going to do it. Then you get into some of the other stuff, like the actual flows that we do in Animal Flow that looks a little bit more like breakdancing or capoeira, or we have another section called form-specific stretches, which looks more yogic in nature. And so if you were to see any of these things, you could go, oh, okay, that might be Animal Flow, or it might just be one of those other, things that came way before Animal Flow. But we're finding this really interesting thing now where, because of, we're kind of like hitting this tipping point where the name Animal Flow has become at least well known enough to where when anyone sees someone on the ground, they just go, oh, that person's doing Animal Flow. Which is cool, but also at the same time, it's like, well, it's not always, of course, what we teach. And so we would never get possessive over movement because you can't take credit for any movement. I mean, there's no movement that has not been done before. So it all has to be within, the benefit has to be within the context of the program or the situation in which it's used.
Mm. Yeah, it's like CrossFit. It's like when CrossFit got popular and then everyone started training thrusters and squatting and then doing a set of burpees, people are like, oh yeah, you're doing CrossFit.
It's like you want to get to the Band-Aid level where it's like the brand name is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's where you make your money.
Point.
Yeah, that's the ultimate level. So to talk, Mike, a little bit about the business side of Animal Flow and how it kind of came about. Before you had Animal Flow, you had global
Bodyweight training.
Global Bodyweight training. Can you talk about how you made that transition there and then what that business was as well before you started Animal Flow?
Yeah, for sure. So the very first thing, whenever I started getting into calisthenics, I had a friend of mine who was actually a client who had a film degree, but she was a sociologist for her job. And so I asked her one day if she would help me do some tutorials. And so we just started doing a couple of tutorials on kind of, at that time, lesser known calisthenics movements, or maybe things that were a little bit more creative than the standard pull up, push up. And at that time, I don't know if you guys know like Ryan Hurst from GMB or Al Cavadlo from PCC. Yep. So like those guys and myself, we were all kind of in that space at the same time, which was creating tutorials and kind of creating a website and putting out information. And so, this being 8 years ago, it was a norm, but it was not the norm that it is now. And so at that time I was like, cool, I want to create this company, and we called it Global Bodyweight Training, that really just focused on giving information. And so that was it. That was the goal, is like give people information on how they could just use their own body and they don't need other things. And so as I was creating that and putting out content, that was when I was in my own time, or in the rest of my time, on the floor figuring out how Animal Flow works. And so it was, at that time, the intention was to keep Animal Flow as the movement part of the global bodyweight training system. And so it was like, okay, if this is the more linear sagittal plane calisthenic stuff, then this is the movement to help create a more cohesive or rounded program. So Animal Flow was under the global bodyweight training umbrella for a really, really long time. And it wasn't until we put out an Animal Flow DVD, just launched it, and it did very well quickly. So then after that, I put together a certification and got it accredited and started teaching workshops. And, the first workshop, there was one person. And then the next workshop, there was 10 people. And then it started selling out relatively quickly. But it was when there started to become some recognition for Animal Flow as a separate entity and a separate brand that we decided to actually split them. And so on paper, Animal Flow is still part of Global Bodyweight Training, but it's two separate companies.
Right.
And so we realized that Global Bodyweight Training is still around, but basically that's now focused on a program I put out a couple of years ago called Bodyweight Athlete. And so that's more focused on that program. And then Animal Flow is something completely different. And so for Global Bodyweight Training with the program, the Bodyweight Athlete, it's just an extensive, intensive program that's just streaming or downloadable. Whereas with Animal Flow, the business model is, of course, the instructional DVD videos, but then also the certifications are really big for us. And so we're mostly an education company. And so it's our goal to certify as many fitness professionals as possible. And so the way in which we do that is we have now 17 master instructors. So we call them master instructors, meaning they can teach the level 1 certification. And so we have those guys all over the globe. So potentially any weekend we could have 17 workshops going on. And within those workshops, we usually cap out around 30 people. And so the reach at this point can be very extensive. And so we can reach a lot of people. And then of course you have to look at, if they're all fitness professionals, then how many people are they affecting within their practice or their gyms or their personal training studios. And so that is our main, business model, is we're an education company.
Mm. So how have you managed to kind of build it just purely online? Because obviously you don't have a space. I looked at your Instagram, you kind of train all over the place, which is obviously the benefit of this style of training. Without there being an HQ, how have you managed to kind of coordinate all this stuff with all the people? How did you also find the right people to be master trainers?
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you guys know of a guy named Michel Dalcourt who created the Viper, and he has a company called Institute of Motion. Anyways, when we first started out with Animal Flow, we met him through a gym chain that we were working with in the States called Equinox. And so he gave us a really good piece of advice, which was, one, asked me if I wanted to make this about me or make it about the program. And for me, it was common sense to make it about the program, because if you make it about you, then there's a shelf life, because you're always the face and you're always the person that people look to be the face. And so once you've established that, it's tough to then spread the focus to other people if you started off going, oh, it's all about me. So that was my answer to him, which was, no, I want it to be about the program. I want it to be about the brand name, not about me. And so he said, okay, well, my advice to you then is, you're not going to be able to replicate or duplicate who you are. So you're going to have to find other people who are rock stars in their own right, who can create their own following, so that when people show up to a level 1 workshop and you're not the one teaching it, they don't give a shit, because the other person is such a badass that they're fine and happy to have that person be their kind of go-to leader for Animal Flow. And that's exactly what we did. So we essentially started building a team of people who were already presenters for other programs, because we wanted people to come in, and the person who was in front of them orchestrating the course, they were like a showman. Like, we wanted them to be, again, rock stars. And so we started scouting out different people in different countries and finding out like who was the best of the best, and then talking to them and seeing if they were even interested, if they even knew what Animal Flow was, et cetera, et cetera. And so we kind of went out and hunted these people down. Some of them, of course, would come to us over time, especially as we got more popular. But it really has been about creating a team. And so for us, it's a family dynamic. So like, our masters, we're family. We see each other once a year. We do a massive retreat, and we do monthly calls, and we just make sure that everyone's in it. And it's just this intimate experience, because we then consider all of the instructors. So like the 6,000 people that have taken the course as instructors, we're very family oriented, and so we use that word, we use that term a lot. And that's one of the things that CrossFit did so brilliantly, was create community. And so we have a lot of that community sense within Animal Flow, so much so that on our instructors Facebook page, if you're going to Dubai and you live in Kansas, then you go, hey, I'm going to be in Dubai. Who's in Dubai? And 5 people will go, hey, I'm in Dubai. Let's hang out. Let's get together. Let's flow. Let's, go out for drinks. You can stay on my couch, like whatever.
Yeah.
So, we've been really fortunate to see that. And I have to say that's probably been a huge contributing factor to the success and the traction that we've had, is that each one of those people who are really into the program, they're the best source of marketing, because they tell people about the program, and not in a way that's like, oh, you should come take this session with me because I want your money. It's more of like, hey, there's this thing that I really care about that I think that you would really care about. So it's like, like giving someone like a back in the day, like a mixtape of like some songs that you liked, it's like, hey, here's some jams I think you'll really like, Summer Jams 1998 or whatever. And, so it's kind of like that thing, like where it's intimate enough to where you're excited about it and excited to tell other people about it. And so I think that's contributed a lot to our traction.
Mm. Who was the first master trainer that you got, and where did you find him or her?
So we actually took on 4 people right away. And so 2 of them, a guy named Chris Flo, who was a master trainer, for TRX and had run other courses. A guy named Clifton Harsky, who was at that time the master trainer for a company called MoveNat, which you guys may have heard of.
Yeah.
And then there was another person in Miami named Kathy Donato, who was actually, she had not been a master trainer of anything else before, but she was there from day one. So she was at the same gym as me when I was creating Animal Flow. And she would see me crawling around on the floor every single day, and eventually really wanted to get involved. And so she was so committed that we were like, all right, cool, you're one of us. Mm. And then another guy from UK, because that was the first European market that we started developing in, a guy named Richard Scrivener, who is just a brilliant dude and a great presenter. And so those were our original 4. So we had 3 in the States and then 1 in Europe. And then we just started growing from there.
And what do you think it was that got them on board? Obviously, like you said at the time, it was gaining popularity. So maybe not, they hadn't heard about it, or maybe they had heard about it. Obviously, the girl had heard about it and was doing it. But how did you get them to believe that it was better than the training that they were obviously sold on at the moment? I know MoveNat's stuff. You know, I know the people in there are pretty into it and pretty hardcore. If you're a head trainer, master trainer there, like how do you come across to this new thing as you get approached to it?
So for each one of those guys, they had, so like I know Chris Flo had taken a workshop, and actually the funny story is he snuck into the first workshop because
Scrolled in.
Yeah. Well, he had been one of our mutual friends, a guy you guys may also know, Dr. Perry Nicholson, who's a brilliant dude. He told Chris, he was like, hey, there's this thing called Animal Flow. You should come check it out. I'm going to a workshop this weekend. And Chris took that as, hey, you're my guest to this thing. Like, you don't have to pay for it. Don't worry about it. And so Chris shows up and everyone's like signing in. And my business partner, Karen, who's like very laser focused, was like trying to get everyone to come in and sign in. He was just standing in the back. It was like a packed workshop. So he was just standing in the back, and he never ended up paying for that workshop. So,
so we took it out of his paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to debit, take that out. But the thing with Chris is he knew right away. So this guy's a visionary. He's always looking forward. And so he knew that this was certainly going to be the way of the future, as far as like definitely the next 5 years. So I don't know about 20 years from now, but at that time he was like, okay, and he works with high school athletes. So he's in that realm. So he works with young athletes, and he's like, man, I can see uses for this right away. And so he approached us, and we were like, after a few interviews and then, basically checking the word on the streets about his cred. And so we took him on. Same thing with Cliff. Cliff had separated from MoveNat at the time. And so we knew that he was a great presenter, great instructor. And he ended up taking the course. And again, same thing. He was like, I can see the benefit and the application of this in so many different contexts. So I want to be part of it. And so that's, our rule of thumb has always been work with people you like, because life's too short to work with shitty people. So we really, like, even in the interview process, if we didn't jive with someone, we're like, no, man, you're not part of the family. And so, you guys know, typically you'll know within the first, 20 minutes if you really are going to get along with somebody or not. Sometimes that intuition is wrong, but
yeah, it's the interview process is a tough one. Also because I think there's, like, when you're meeting people in the industry, they're always so passionate about the training, which is obviously really important. But then there's so much that goes along with it when you're part of an organization, which you can't really know until you're a month in. Like, how good are they at showing up on time? Like, how good are they, making themselves presentable and maintaining the energy? Like, maybe they had 14 coffees before your interview, and maybe they're normally pretty flat. And so it's always a tricky one. But obviously you have a pretty good process. You've managed to filter out any of the bad eggs. So what is it that you plan on in terms of the vision for Animal Flow over the next, let's say 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, simple, just world domination.
Start with CrossFit.
You don't want anyone walking on 2 feet.
Walk
Exactly. That's obsolete. Bipedal is absolutely obsolete.
Devolving.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, we're going to continue on the trajectory that we're on now, which is educate as many people as we can. We're going to have different offerings. So we're right now finishing up our Animal Flow Kids certification. So we're finishing up a certification not only for Animal Flow instructors for them to work with kids, but we'll also do like some at-home kind of, mommy and me Animal Flow videos. So we can reach different populations. We'll also do some stuff for elderly clients as well. And then next year, our focus is going to be on Animal Flow group. So we'll put out 4 different class formats as a certification. And so if someone's an Animal Flow level 1 instructor, they can come and take the group certification if they teach group. And in that, we have 4 different classes, as I mentioned. One of them is more of like our Animal Flow answer to yoga in a way, but more strength-based. So more like voluntary muscle contraction for mobility versus relaxation. And so then we'll have an actual flow class. Then we'll have more of a timed interval class, which will be more of like almost like a HIIT training class. And then we'll have a mixed modality class. So kettlebell, suspension, and animal flow. So that's on the horizon as far as, short term. But then long term, again, we're just going to continue to do what we're doing. And I think for me, the vision is to see Animal Flow pop up again in all these different spaces. And so to see it pop up in CrossFit gyms more, to see it pop up in, gymnastics gyms, see it pop up more in the big box gyms and in the small studios. And just to where people realize it's just another thing. It's another tool, and so seeing how multifaceted it is and can be, and have people just accept it widely and just go like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's that thing. And I use 2 movements from that, or I use all 40 movements from that. And any way is cool with me. I'm like, yeah, cool. If you can find benefit from one movement, use it. That's great. And so I just want to continue to see that happen globally, just where it pops up more and more and more, and people know what it is. And they no longer associate it with like something that's just trendy and kitschy and like, cheesy or whatever. It's like, it's a thing that's here. I mean, it's going to stay.
Do you ever see a possibility, or did it ever cross your mind that there could be gyms that just do Animal Flow? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's also been something it's an option, right? It's a possibility to have a brick and mortar Animal Flow gym, which would have those different class formats on the schedule, of course. And you would also have some one-on-ones. And so you could certainly do it. I mean, the business model is there. It's just at this point, we've been so focused on spreading the word through education and empowering others with the practice that hasn't been an immediate goal. But we've had a couple of people want to be investors on that type of project. So we know that it's a possibility. And so, I think it could be a very real possibility in, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It does seem to me like it has been generally negative for a lot of people's fitness, how niche though, like the gyms can start to get now that, CrossFit gym and you only do CrossFit, or like we get lots of clients from like F45 or Orange Theory gyms, and they're just doing exactly the same thing every single day. And it's like, sometimes I think the niche gyms is almost like part of the problem.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting topic, because you're seeing where those are popping up more and then dying more at the same time. So I would be really interested to see like what's on the other end of this, right? Because anytime that we see something push in one direction, there of course has to be an ebb and flow or a recoil. And sometimes it has to go really far in one direction until we see where it kind of settles. And so I'm interested to see, like, we're in such an exciting time right now, I think, in fitness. Like, just to be a part of it right now it's extraordinary. I mean, there's so many things that are inhabiting the space right now that anything could happen. Like, anything could happen. And I just be like, yeah, I totally didn't see that or saw that coming, and I'm okay with it, because you never fucking know, right?
Yeah.
But with those very specialized studios, it will be interesting to see. So like, and I don't know their programming like for Orange Theory, but just like anything, if you're coming in day after day and you're doing the same thing day after day, just like we talked about earlier, eventually either your attention span for that thing is going to run out, or your body's going to go, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And hopefully that happens before you get an actual breakdown in the system, like an injury. So I think you're right that it is part of the problem of having these strict niche gyms. But then at the same time, and this is where I always go back and forth, which is going back to that thing, which is the love affair. So like if someone comes in and they've never done fitness before and they try Orange Theory or whatever the thing may be, and they're like, you know what, I love that, I'm going to go back again, then that's cool. At least now they're in the system. So now they may go and try CrossFit, they may try Animal Flow, they may try these other things that they may not have ever experienced because they didn't have the one thing that got them in the door. So So it's, yeah, I don't think there is an answer to that topic other than, I guess we're going to have to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back and forth in my head all the time. I always wonder, what is it that keeps people, like, is it a personality type, or is it a certain program that keeps someone doing the same thing for 5 to 10 years versus a new program every 3 to 6 months? You know, what is it, the person that's been to all these gyms and tried all these things, what is it that they're looking for, you know? So I do always find it, it's an interesting thing, and it's probably a deep psychological problem or thing within that personality type or that person's mind that makes them jump around a lot. And then in the same way, it's probably something else that makes people stay around for 5 years in one different program or type of training. So I think that the ultimate goal is we're keeping people as healthy and as capable as possible to face whatever challenges or whatever things they want to do in their life. And I just know there's some programs out there like Orange Theory that do a very similar set of movements and a very similar type of training. The problem is now you only have a very limited amount of tools to go take on a new sport or to go take on a new challenge or to play with your kids or whatever it might be. And that's just a poor investment of time, I think, from my perspective. But at the same time, it is a low barrier of entry for someone to kind of come in and, like you say, enter the industry or enter the realm that they weren't in before. So it's always hard to say it's completely bad. I would say it's more just not optimal. But if it's a start, it's a start.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the word functional, right? Functional training, the term functional training, which has been abused and bastardized and drugged through the dirt so many times for so long. The intention of that, when that term first came out, it was, train someone or prepare them to be better at their work, sport, hobby, or day-to-day life. And so that is such a powerful message, and it's something so simple, but it's something that gets lost, right? And so what you're saying is exactly that, which is train them to where they can better handle anything that comes up in their life, whether that be in sport, work, hobby, or day-to-day life. And so what happens with those cookie cutter programs is, one, there's no independent individual programming that can actually assess and then feed those needs and facilitate better performance in those needs, because everyone gets the same workout and they get the same workout every time they come in. And so again, not only is that dishonoring the complexity of our system, but then also now you're literally setting that person up for overuse strategies or injuries or whatever may come out of their body doing the same movements over and over and over again. But then also, again, they're not as prepared for new things that come their way. And so, and for someone that may be stepping off the curb, as simple as that, or it may be that they're bending over to pick up their child, or, whatever life comes at them. And that's the thing, we always have to think about training, not solely for aesthetics and cosmetics, but how are we going to live our life optimally longer? And not every program, unfortunately, addresses that need.
Yeah, it's an interesting battle that we face every day. Mike, we got 4 questions that we finish all our podcasts with and ask all our guests. I believe you've been given these questions ahead of time, so you are prepared. The first question that we're going to get into is the interview question. So, Mike, if you had an opportunity to sit down with anyone alive today and interview them, ask them anything you'd want, who would it be and why?
I think, and there's a lot of people I could say, but I think the one that I always come back to, who's to me was very influential in my early years as a trainer, but also is just fascinating to me in the fitness space, is Paul Chek. And I assume you guys know Paul Chek?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that guy, I think, is a visionary, and I think that he was doing things, of course, many, many years before it became popular or considered to be normal. And so now, of course, he's progressed in his thinking and his understanding of the human psyche and chakras and all those things. And so I would love to just sit down with him and ask him questions about, like, how do you progress as someone who's really ahead of their time and a trailblazer, how do you progress dealing with people that are constantly coming against you? And then how do you stay relevant when you've been in it so long? And then I'll ask them, of course, like, what herbs are going to be good in the upcoming apocalypse? Or like, when are the aliens coming to get us? Or things that I feel like Paul Chek would be able to tell me.
Yeah, you have an answer for sure. Yeah. Oh, this question again.
Probably only
and then I think, probably to say someone else which I really look up to in the fitness space, but more from a entrepreneurial space, would be Aubrey Marcus, the creator of Onnit. Do you guys know Onnit?
Yeah, he almost died like a week ago.
Yeah, he got in a bad car accident.
Yeah.
So I know Aubrey, and we know each other, and I've worked with him on Animal Flow before. But man, that guy is such a sharp dude. And to create a company like Onnit, and I love Onnit. I hang out at Austin as much as I can and hang out with those guys and train with those guys. But to create a company that does, in my perspective, everything right. Like, I think they do everything right, from the branding to the mentality to the philosophy to the products to the supplements. I mean, I just think they do it right. And so I would love to talk to him about like his story and how he's plans on, again, staying relevant as they continue to grow globally as well.
Yeah. The I would ditto that question, that interview as well with Aubrey. The only thing they do wrong, I believe, is that they haven't actually managed to set up a good supply in Australia, because a lot of their products, a lot of their products don't make it through customs in Australia for whatever reason, for the ingredients. So like all of Australia basically can't really get Onnit products, or the good Onnit products. They can get like MCT oil, which is like, obviously anyone can get the MCT oil.
Right.
But like the Alpha Brain and the Shroom Tech and all the other cool supplements and stuff that really are the true Onnit brand, they basically can't get them. Yeah, and I think it might be the case in some other countries. So it is bigger in the US than it is anywhere else. Even though it's obviously a global company, a lot of those products can't actually make it through customs, unfortunately.
Well, that's a great opportunity for some black market Onnit sales in Australia. There's an opportunity there. Yeah. No, you know what? I'd actually heard something similar about Europe as well. So it's clear that my perception of their success is probably mostly in the States, since some of the other countries can't even get their products. Yeah.
That's not to say it's not a great company. I love their marketing and all that stuff, and obviously their podcasts and what they brand as well. And I think they're making, generally taboo subjects more acceptable and, more dinner table conversation. And they weren't in the past, right? Exploring different aspects of the human consciousness and really thinking about why we're here and what we're doing and all that sort of stuff, which, normally is hippie talk and stuff that most people don't talk about, or they just go, he's talking about that shit again. It's becoming more mainstream to talk about those subjects, and tied into all that stuff is mental health. And obviously that's a huge issue at the moment for the Western world. So I think the more conversations like that someone like Aubrey can open up and be okay for people to talk about, serving a greater purpose. So it is good stuff.
Man, you're absolutely right. And, their slogan, total human optimization. I mean, you can't optimize the human without looking at all the parts of the human. And so, that's, if you just work on the physical, then you're going to be lacking. If you just work on the mental, you're going to be lacking. If you just work on mindset, if you just work on, mending past traumas or whatever it is, those are just pieces. And so you have to look at the system as a whole. And so to your point, I think they do a very good job of that. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. So the next part is, what is something you do every single day, Mike, that you feel like is essential to the success of your day?
So I get up really early, guys. So I typically will get up at like 3:30 a.m. That's usually my wake up time.
Yeah. That's a bedtime. That's a more legitimate bedtime.
Holy shit. 3:30.
Once you go before 4, there's got to be like a plane you're catching.
So the worst part is my body clock finds 3:30 wherever I'm at in the world. And so like, I don't even need an alarm clock. I just wake up at 3:30. Not saying it's a good thing. Definitely not saying it's a good thing. But so to say like the thing that I have to do is I have to get up, I have to have coffee, and then I have to train right away. And so if I can do that, then the rest of the day is going to be good no matter what happens. But like for me, since I wake up so early, I'm just one of those people that hit the ground running. And so like my best effort for the day is from like 3:30 a.m. to, almost noon. And then I just diminish in value after noon until I go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's like every hour that passes, I just get worse and worse. So for me, starting my day like that is just like, it's church to me. Like I have to do it. I have to train right away, and I have to get up. I have to have coffee. I have to train right away, and then I'm okay. And typically I'll do like my resistance training, whether that be loaded or body weight, first thing in the morning, and then I'll do a movement practice later in the day. And so like, if I get both of those things in, I'm good.
So what time are you normally going to bed then? That's my next question.
11 a.m.
Yeah. Typically I'm in bed by 10.
Whew.
This is a short sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, like I'm not a great sleeper, and I don't think it's optimal, but that's what I get by on.
Yeah.
And so I would generally have about 5 hours of sleep a night. Yeah.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah. For as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Right. It's the, what's that? The wolf? Is it the wolf? Have you heard
you're the lion. The lion gets up early.
Have you heard of the 4 phenotypes? By it was Dr.
Michael Bruce.
Yeah, Dr. Michael Bruce. He's like a famous sleep expert. He's been on Oprah and Dr. Oz and stuff like that. And we had him on the show. And he has these 4 animals basically that are like the 4 phenotypes of sleep. And everyone fits into one of the 4 categories. You can take an online test to find out which animal that you are, but most people intuitively know as they're going through the quiz what they'll end up being. But I think once you have more of a label as to what you are, you look at the strengths and weaknesses, and maybe give some people who are in the outlier animal phenotypes more justification as to why they are the way they are, because the majority of people bears have a wake up around 7 or 8 o'clock and then go to bed around 9 or 10. That's like most of society, right? And most of society is set up to suit a bear, 9 to 5 job, go out on the weekends, stay out moderately late. Then you've got more the outlier ones, which are the wolf, which is
nighttime.
Yeah, stays up really, really late. People who just can't fall asleep before midnight, and 1 or 2 is when they sleep, and they want to sleep in all the way till 10, 11 a.m. the next day. And if they try and become more like a bear to fit society's mold or to suit their job,
they just suck in the morning.
They suck. Yeah. They hurt, and they get all kinds of, chronic diseases, and they're just not optimal. Then the next one is you have the lion. The lion gets up early. So that's like you. And someone the lion typically though goes to bed a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Normally goes to bed around like 8, 9 o'clock, and then will get up like crack of dawn before the sun usually, and always has been that way, and just basically can't not get up early. And then the last one is the dolphin. And the dolphin is, because in the real world, real actual dolphins, they sleep unihemispherically, which means that one part of their brain is awake while the other half of their brain is asleep, which is people that suffer from like insomnia and bipolar and that sort of stuff. But they basically can't sleep, and then they're just micro napping all throughout the day, and they're the most fucked up. Yeah, they're the most screwed up. Yeah, they have the most problems. But basically, it's like, look, when you find out your phenotype, is that you have to set your life up to be that phenotype, no matter what it is. Because if you move out of that structure, life's going to be very hard for you. Nothing's going to be optimized. You're going to feel like shit most of the time. And it's really good stuff. And
I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant to make that like analogous to the animals. Funny you mentioned that. If I am a lion, my business partner is certainly a wolf. So like at points, and at one point we were roommates, I would be getting up, she would be going to sleep. And so we would pass off information about like, oh, I spoke to this person, or did you get that email about this? And so like, we would have meetings at like 3:30 in the morning if she was going to sleep and I was going to train. And so, sometimes that could be really beneficial to to link up with a different animal like that.
That's crazy.
That's so good. So you can like always take phone calls around the world. Like someone's always
Yeah, absolutely. 24 hours, someone's available.
That's good. That's brilliant.
That is actually the original theory on why they have the different. It was in the sleep book of why some people go to bed late, some people wake up early. Was because when we're like hunter gatherers, if more people were awake, more of the time, there was like less chance of like a lion coming and eating you.
Mm.
Right, and so much of that stuff is evolutionary, right? So much of those little things that we have, human traits now, you can usually track back to some necessity and or self-defense mechanism that we were fulfilling at some point in our evolutionary progress. So yeah, I fully get behind that. That's cool.
Yeah, that was good. Michael Bruce back on the podcast. Third question we asked is, what is something recently that you've changed your mind on, Mike, that for a long time was a strong held belief of yours?
Okay. So I think for me, probably one of the things that I've had the most, or has been an epiphany, or I've changed my stance on the most over the past couple of years, is I think most people in the fitness realm who are professionals, especially those who kind of pride themselves on being a bit of a geek, or like really getting into the science behind certain things or certain modalities or training styles or whatever it may be. I think in my younger years, I think I was a bit of a snob in ways where I would see other things and be like, oh, that's shit. Or no, why would you ever start a workout with that exercise? Like that exercise should be the third exercise, or, like whatever it may be. I thought that I knew, how everything was supposed to go, due to my studies. Like I was like, no, like this has to go here. This has to go there. This has to go there. And I think what I realized over the past decade is that everything works. Everything works for the right person at the right time. And so it may be Zumba. It may be like, it doesn't matter. Like everything works. And so I've certainly opened up my eyes substantially to not be, not jump to judgment about new things. And then definitely realize that, again, for the right person at the right time, that thing could be life changing. And so that could drastically increase the quality of their life. And it was something that I may have gone, oh no, that's trash, or that's garbage, or why would you put that there? Or why would you work out that way? And I've just really changed my perspective on that. And, to be totally honest, 16 years ago, if I would have seen Animal Flow, I probably would have been like, yo, what is that shit?
This shit is whack.
That shit is whack. Like, why are people doing this? That's ridiculous. So I think that's something that I've thankfully changed my mind on and my perspective on over the past couple of years, which is everything works. Everything works, guys. Don't get too caught up. everything works.
Yeah, that's usually what I see is the people that like hold on to that for too long, like, nah, I'm right. Like this study said this and this periodization that, and et cetera, et cetera. And they're the people who are most closed-minded. Like maybe from like an evidence-based scientific standpoint, like maybe you are right. Maybe there is something better that we could do here. Or like maybe, we do need to fix the toe position to, optimize hamstring mobility or whatever. Like, but at the end of the day, like if people aren't going to do it and they don't really care, then it doesn't matter. And then people just can't let go of that. They just stay closed-minded. And then they close themselves off to the possibility of other things like animal flow, like gymnastics training, like all these other things that they can be beneficial. It's always best, like you said, to be bad at something and try things, at least try them, to know if you like them or not. And when I just see those people who've just done the same thing over and over and over again, they just keep harping on about the same shit. Just don't really have time for them anymore. Yeah,
man, you're so right. And, you mentioned something very important there, which is you can have the best program, the best written program in the entire world. And if that person hates that program, then it's not doing fuck all for them, because their adherence to that program is going to be minimal because they don't enjoy it. And then you also have to look at the fact that if you have this beautiful program that you've written for someone, but you have to remember that person comes in a different person every single day. And so if they come in one day and you've got all this high intensity stuff programmed for them, but they didn't sleep, they broke up with their boyfriend, girlfriend, their nutrition's been really terrible, you're going to have to be able to modify that program for that day, depending upon how their body's reacting, their heart rate variability, like whatever it may be. And we have to have the flexibility to be able to do that. And sometimes that may be like, hey, we're going to play tag for an hour, or, like something that seems so ridiculous, but it feeds their system and for what their system needs that day. And so I think being pliable, being malleable like that, to realize that of the program that you've written doesn't necessarily match the person that's showing up that day.
Yeah, nice. That's good. Okay, final question that we'll leave the listeners with, Mike, is what is a favorite book and quote of yours that you have?
So I'm a big fan of an author by the name of Katie Bowman. And so she wrote a couple, I think she's written like 8 books now, but the book that I was turned on to from her was called Move Your DNA. And it's just about how important it is, even on a cellular level, for us as human beings to move all the time. And that doesn't mean exercise. It means just move all the time. And so, one of the things that she talks a lot about is getting away from that idea of, okay, and all I have to do is exercise 1 hour a day and I'm good. And so like changing the concept of what exercise is. Exercise doesn't mean movement. Movement doesn't always have to mean exercise. And so like really opening up that process, or that thought process of, stimulate the body as much as you can all the time. And so one of her quotes, and I don't know that this is word for word, and so I don't want to do it injustice, but essentially she says, the body that you're in now is an accumulation of the loads and stressors that you've experienced through your lifetime. And that to me is so tremendously profound, because you have to take a moment and go, oh wow, the body that we're sitting in, you guys, me, everyone who's listening, the body that we're sitting in is the story of my entire life. So when I broke my ankle when I was 5, when I dislocated my shoulder skateboarding when I was 12, like all of those things play a role in the vessel in which that we are inhabiting. And so if you can take that seriously and realize the gravity of that, then that opens up the philosophy of going, holy shit, the way in which I treat my body right now, I'm training for the experience that I want to have 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And so, of course, right now in our culture, everything is disposable, like Instagram, Snapchat, like everything is like, it has no shelf life, right? And so we're getting further away from the concept of train to last, because we want everything now. And so to challenge people to really think about, is the way in which they're working out, moving, or living their life, is that serving them? And will it serve them for who they want to be when they're 60, when they're 70? And so to me, that quote really resonated with me a lot, because to me, that was part of what body weight training was, what self-mastery was, what skill acquisition was. It was about being on a path that you never reach the finish line, right? You just hopefully get better. And so, that always brings me to the concept of our bodies are vessels. And so these vessels that we're sitting in right now will be the vessels in which we navigate the rest of our life. And God willing, it'll be a very long time from now. But whenever you're 75, you may no longer be into kettlebells. You may no longer be into sprints. You may no longer be into whatever, but you're still going to be in your body. You're still going to be in your vessel. And the way that you'll experience it will be directly reflected upon by the way in which you trained it, moved it, did all these things. And so to me, it's just, it's such a mind expanding and mind blowing concept to just think that like everything you do right now is going to show up in one way or another as you grow and as you continue to get older. And so if we can encourage people to think about that in the way in which they experience their vessel, I think it's, you can change someone's trajectory of how they're living their life.
That's cool.
That was amazing. That was a great speech. I like that. I think that's a pretty good place to end it. Mike, thanks so much for being on the show. So animalflow.com is the website. Where else can people learn more about Animal Flow?
Yeah. So animalflow.com, they can find upcoming workshops. They can find some free videos. They can find the Animal Flow, what's called 2.0 video, which is basically just the updated version of the original DVD that we put out, the instructional DVD. So they can find all of that at animalflow.com. And then if they're on Instagram or Facebook, on Instagram, it's Animal Flow Official. And then Facebook, it's just Animal Flow. And so there's always content. So we're always putting up either just like little challenges or flows or tutorials. So there's always stuff. So they can find us there.
And what about your personal one? I know you don't want to be the face, but people want to see some beast flows. So where can we find you?
So Mike GBT, which stands for Global Bodyweight Training, is the handle. So on Instagram, that's my handle. And then on Facebook, it's just Mike Fitch. But yeah, I do, that's my personal stuff. So I'm happy to always share like where I'm traveling to or tutorials, flows. There, you may also find more calisthenic stuff as well. So more body weight stuff, not just animal flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic. All right, Mike, thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate your time, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.